Welcome back to the Mental Dietitian Podcast. I'm your host, Ahren Lynch-Potter, and this is episode 114. And this episode there's no plan. I just hit record. I'm going to see where it goes. And it's been 2 weeks since the last episode I released. I haven't been as consistent as I would like to be. And to be honest, I have felt a lack of direction with this podcast lately. I really have. It's like I'm 114 episodes in. I've felt this way pretty much since episode 100. And I think it is because I started it out with no real plan. I just wanted to, the premise of the show was to give people a proper, healthy mental diet, as in what things I'd be talking about, concepts I'd be discussing to help people learn about things that I've learned about and that my guests have learned about so they can change their lives. And that's a great mission. And at the same time, I feel like I've repeated and said so many different things, and it hasn't grown the way that I thought it would grow. But I also haven't put the effort in the way that it would take for it to grow the way it needs to grow. And I've had this realization lately, and it's a very basic realization, but the thing is about realizations, and the thing is about knowing information, is you can know all the information all you want, but what are you doing in your life? What actions are you taking? And goes for anybody, any person that likes knowing things, including myself. I always challenge them and myself, especially lately. It's like, okay, that's cool that you know all this stuff, but what are you doing? What actions are you taking? It kind of reminds me of the same concept of asking why all the time. You can ask why all you want, but the things that will really change your life is asking how and what. What am I going to do about this realizations, and how am I going to go about it? Because asking why can just keep you stuck. So for me, this realization I've had is it doesn't matter what anybody says. It matters what you do. And this is a very simple thing that we all know. We can know all we want, but what are we doing? What are we doing day to day? Where are we investing our time? Where are we investing our money? And wherever we invest energy, so energy is in basically two forms off the top of my head right now, which would be time and money if you were going to invest energy into something. So money is an energy. Time is the most precious thing, because when I go like this, I can never go back ever again and change that I just snap my fingers. I can't. I could try, oh, what if I snapped them differently? What if I did it differently? What if I didn't snap my fingers? There's nothing I can do about that. I've snapped my fingers. It's done. The past is the past. Couldn't have been any other way because it wasn't. And that's it. So the challenge to myself and the challenge to you listening to this is, what are some areas in your life right now where you may know a lot, but you are not taking the actions? You're not taking the actions. You're not investing time or money into whatever it may be. And if you want to have success, as in growth, expansion, whatever that means to you, in whatever it is, you have to invest energy. You have to invest energy. You have to invest time. You have to invest money. And where focus goes, energy flows. So whatever you focus on in life, energy will flow to those things. And there's so many things in our lives that are trying to take our focus away. Social media, TV, video games, distractions, drinking on the weekend with your buddies. There's so many things that can take our focus away. And whatever we focus on, that's where our energy goes. And I'm bad for this. Like I have these little energy leaks that happen all the time. All the time. Like crazy. Like spending too much time scrolling on Instagram, which is a perfect algorithm based on what I like and where my energy is and where my focus is. So when I speak on this podcast, it's half for me and half for you. Because anytime I say something, anytime I'm sharing something, it helps me stay accountable to what I'm sharing. Because anytime something comes out of my mouth, I have an internal dialogue that's like, man, you're not doing that. And I used to have a very hard time with that because it felt like it was a governor on me. It felt like it was a part of me that was mean. It was a part of me that was always limiting me. I've changed that relationship with that part of me, and I've realized that any voice, even the ones that were quite cruel or quite mean, are just parts of me that are trying to love me in their own way. So if I have an inner critic or an inner judge or whatever it may be, that part of me is trying to love me in its own way. And it can be very uncomfortable sometimes. And that's why I've invested the past few years on really working on the inner world and working on the outer world. But I've noticed that the more I expand what I'm comfortable with or what I can sit with, what uncomfortable things I can sit with on my inner world, the more that it reflects it in the outer world. So there's things that I know I need to do, and there's things that you know that you need to do. And sometimes there's parts of us that are not doing these things. It might be exercise. I have many clients right now, coaching clients that I work with, that they're like, oh, I know I need to exercise more. So, okay, you could look at why. You could be like, oh, well, I don't exercise. Let's take it to the extreme example, extreme example, which was a woman I met recently. It was actually a woman that I sold a vehicle to. And it's the first time that I've ever met anybody in person that has said this to me. I've read it in books. I've never had a client say this, but I've heard about it. And I don't even know how we got on the conversation. It seems that people just talk to me about this kind of stuff, even if I'm selling them a freaking car. And I wasn't trying to coach them. I wasn't talking about emotions. It just happened. I don't know how it happened, but she basically said that the reason I'm overweight is because I was sexually abused as a child. And it's like a defense mechanism for me being overweight. And anytime I try to exercise and try to go to the gym, there's this deep thing that says no. I'm like, whoa, okay. Okay. Like, here's the heated seats of the vehicle. Like it was very interesting. But I've just come to accept that because of the work that I've done within myself, and I feel safe, and I feel like I've done this I've gone to deep emotional places. People seem to subconsciously feel that, and they seem to just share things with me like that. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, yes, there's probably some deep healing to do around that for this woman who is in her 50s, I think. But in the end, it's about the decisions that we make and the choices that we make. And one of my favorite quotes is, life will present you with people and circumstances to show where you are not free. So for example, the circumstances that woman is being shown in her life is she's very overweight. She probably doesn't like it. She doesn't feel good. But then there's a deeper emotional thing which she's aware of, which is amazing. She's aware of why. You can be aware of why all you want. But to change your life, you have to take action, which requires choices. And when you make these choices, you will bump up into these the walls of the prison of your own perspective. And the prison of our own perspective is created by things like that for some people. It's, oh, I just feel overwhelmed. Okay, what are you going to do? Oh, this is just too much for me. Okay, can you increase your capacity? Can you keep showing up? Because otherwise, we just live, like I said, in a prison of our own perspective. And we will avoid things that create certain feelings within us, like that woman going to the gym, even though we know logically that exercising is good. It's one of the greatest antidepressants that there is. It's so powerful, but you can't logic people and you can't shame people into doing what you think is a logical decision. They have to make the choice on their own. It's as simple as that. And my challenge is, and I always like throwing out a challenge, if you listen to this show and you've been listening to a bunch of episodes, I hope that when I talk about these things, I hope that you feel something, even if it's very uncomfortable. I hope you feel something, because whatever the feeling is, especially if it's an uncomfortable feeling, that is a compass. It is a direction to go. Going back to that saying, life will present you with people and circumstances to show where you are not free. So if there's certain things in your life where you cannot do it, if it's moving your body, maybe you used to be stronger than you were. Maybe you're not as strong as you once were. Maybe you are much more overweight than you were. And when you go back to the gym and you get on the treadmill, you start going to jujitsu again, or you start doing some kind of exercise, you will run into that feeling. You'll get out of breath in 30 seconds, and you used to be able to run 10 kilometers, no problem. You just banged in to the wall on the prison of your own perspective, and it's your job, as uncomfortable as it is to expand that as best you can. And then there will be emotions that come up. This is why I was talking to one of my good friends, Jeff, about this recently. He said the fact that the entire personal training industry is usually filled with 18 to 24-year-olds, especially in commercial gyms, like Good Life Fitness or Anytime Fitness or Snap Fitness or any of these gyms that are around the world that I've seen, LA Fitness. There's a lot of young people that are not trained on this deeper emotional stuff. So imagine if that woman went into a gym and she wanted to work out and she wanted to lose weight. You've got an 18 to 24-year-old. This was me, by the way, that sometimes is shaming somebody that has been sexually abused and has built this external weight as a defense mechanism to not be desirable, right? To not be desirable. So if I'm not desirable, then men won't look at me. And if men won't look at me, then they're not going to want me in that way, which is pretty deep shit. And you've got these young kids basically training people. Not everybody's like that, but that's a problem. I think that's an issue that is in our society. And there's, who knows, maybe that will change over time as the mental health and the physical health world enmesh themselves, and maybe you have trauma-informed personal trainers, which would be amazing. But in the end, it is up to the individual, and you can't save anybody. It's your job to make choices in your life. And I challenge you that when you are living your life, if there's people in your life that you avoid, if there's circumstances that you avoid, you can sometimes you avoid them because you've cleaned up your side of the street. Say if it's people, you've cleaned up your side of the street, but that person is not willing to clean up their side of the street. And what you do is you just choose how you interact with that person. It could be a family member. So I've heard people that want to talk about deep things with their family members, but you can only meet somebody as deep as you've met yourself. So anytime you try to plunge deep with somebody that has not met themselves at that level, you just end up being a mirror for that. And a lot of people don't like that. They're not ready for that. They don't want to talk about that. And some people never will. maybe if they're your parents or your uncle and auntie or your grandparents, you then have to make a choice of, okay, well, I love this person. I want to have these deep conversations with this person, but you may have to get to the place where you're like, you know what, I'm never going to have these deep conversations with this person, and I'm going to interact with this person on this kind of surface level. I'm going to talk about the weather and sports and what the game was like on the weekend. And that's the relationship you have with that person. And that's the dynamic that you choose to have with that person based on how you feel about it at the time. Not every person you're going to have these deep, soul revealing conversations with. And the only one that suffers is the individual that is expecting or has an attachment to having this particular dynamic with this particular person. And then you can either let go of that person in your life, and if that's what you want to do, or you just realize that that's the dynamic you have with that person. So that may be the people that are brought into your life to show you where you're not free. And maybe you creating freedom around that is just acceptance that that may never change and not having an expectation of that. And that can come with a lot of pain, especially if it's somebody that's close to you. But this life is not a Disney movie. Not everybody makes it the way that you think that they should make it. Not everybody is going to do what you think that they should do. And the longer you attach to that and the longer you have expectations of people, the longer you are not free. So it's actually all about you and your relationships with these things. It doesn't mean don't speak your truth. It just means do your work with the relationships and the experiences and the circumstances you have around you so you can truly be free. Because freedom is a feeling that occurs within us. It is not something that somebody else can give us. It's ourselves. So I started this show talking about that I haven't put energy into this podcast. And talking about this now and sharing this, it's very therapeutic. And maybe I'll continue this podcast selfishly as a guy sitting in his spare bedroom sharing his pondering thoughts. And maybe you'll also hear this and you'll learn something as well. Where are you suffering and where are you not free in your life based on expectations and attachments you have to people and circumstances that you either need to accept that it is what it is, or you have the power to potentially change that dynamic, but just know when to let go. There'll come a point where you might try, but there comes a point where you have to let go and accept that that's what it is. Because again, it doesn't matter what people say. It matters what they do. It doesn't mean you don't share what you think the truth is with somebody. Maybe they will change, maybe they won't. That is not up to you. Your job in this life is to expand and to find freedom with the dynamics you have with people and experiences and the circumstances that you have, and do your absolute best. And that's all you can do. And that's what life's about. It's about doing your best with what you've got. And we've always been doing our best with what we've got. Always. So keep doing it. Keep doing your best. You've got this. You've always have. You made it this far. All the things you've been through in your life, everything, every hard thing that you didn't think that you'd get through, you got through. So what's next? Love you guys. We'll see you next week.